Okay, good morning again, Commissioners. Michelle Creer and Preservation staff. This item was last heard on October 8th, 2024. 99 Wooster Street is located on the west side of the street between Spring and Prince Streets in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District, and it is also the Gay Activists Alliance individual landmark. On the upper left, you can see the previous proposal, which was for a 130-inch tall, 32.5 square foot banner to be installed at the second floor on the north side of the facade. There was a consensus among the majority of commissioners present that the banner was excessively large for the building and would obscure and detract from the facade. A majority of those commissioners expressed support for a flagpole more in keeping with flagpoles formerly located at this building and found at other buildings in this historic district, or for another smaller sign. The applicant has returned with a proposal for a flagpole with a flag that is 16.6 square feet, or approximately half the size of the previously proposed banner shown on the bottom. Here you can see the proposed mounting location of the flagpole, along with the previously proposed banner on the upper right. And some streetscape shots showing context on this block of Wooster Street, as well as some closer shots of other flagpoles nearby in the historic district. Lastly, some photos of the subject building when it was in use as a firehouse on the left and when it was occupied by the Gay Activists Alliance, and flagpoles were installed at those times. The applicant is here and can answer any of your questions today.
All right. Do we have any questions for the applicant or Michelle? I don't think we have any questions, so we can probably move right to our discussion. So as Michelle said, this application was for a flagpole, really like a vertical pole at the second floor. And many commissioners felt that it was too large and that they should explore doing something that approximated the flagpoles that were historically found on this building, or a blade sign. And they have come back with a much smaller flagpole and banner, which is similar in shape and size to the flag that was there when it was the Gay Activists Alliance. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you like to start this one?
This seems reasonable to me, and I think it's appropriate.
Commissioner Chen,
Likewise, yes, modest and smaller in size.
Commissioner Chapin,
I think it's a minor addition, and the reduction in size makes it fine to approve.
okay, Commissioner Lutfi, agree. Commissioner Master,
Appropriate.
Commissioner.
Scale change appropriate.
Okay, great. Everybody agrees. So will you go ahead and make the motion?
Right. With regards to LPC 25-00606, 99 Wooster Street, Gay Activists Alliance Firehouse Individual Landmark, Soho Cast Iron District. A neo-Grec Queen Anne style firehouse designed by Napoleon Lebrun and Sons and built in 1881-82. Application is to install a banner. I note that the building style, scale, material, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural or historic features, that there is a historic precedent for the installation of a flagpole at the building and other firehouses and community spaces, that the existing tenant is the sole tenant of the building, therefore no additional signage will be required for another business, that the proposed flagpole installed at the second floor in combination with the existing approved signage will not overwhelm the building, that the flagpole will attach to plain masonry at the mortar joints and will be reversible, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building or the Soho Cast Iron Historic District.
Thank you, Commissioner Chen. Would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi. Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 8 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, that's approved, and we'll move to the
Sarah?
next public meeting item.
Because we started a new live stream, we lost the recording of the roll call and my reading in of the record. So I think we're going to just do that over again. Right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
the roll call first.
Yeah, we'll do the roll call first and then we'll just.
Okay, so for those of us who are joining us, we are going to repeat some portion of our hearing that occurred before we had experienced technical difficulties with our Zoom. So we're going to start with our roll call and then read the first item into the record. So I'll ask our General Counsel, Mark Silverman, to call the roll.
Chair Carroll,
Here.
Vice Chair Bland, Commissioner Chapin,
Here.
Commissioner Chen,
Yeah.
Commissioner Chu, Commissioner Ginsburg,
Here.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Here.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Here.
Commissioner Master.
Here.
All right, and I'll go ahead and reread into the record the item that was just reviewed and approved. That was public meeting item number 1, LPC 25-00606, application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 501, Lot 30, 99 Wooster Street, the Gay Activist Alliance Firehouse Individual Landmark in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. All right, now we'll move to public meeting item number 2, LPC 25-01663, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 567, Lot 23, 23 East 9th Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District. This is a house built in 1843 and remodeled in the 20th century. The application is to construct rooftop and rear yard additions, modify the front and side facades, reconstruct the rear facade, remove skylights and a section of floor, and excavate the cellar. This was last presented at the public hearing of November 26, 2024. No action was taken at that time. The applicants have made revisions to the proposal in response to your comments, and we'll start to present them after we open the proceedings.
All right, we'll do that now. Commissioner Goldblum, would you make a, sorry, I caught you there.
So moved.
Thank you. And Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the proceedings are open and you may begin.
Hello, my name is Elliot Royce. I'm a project architect at Made Design Build in Brooklyn and a registered architect in the state of New York. I'm here with my colleague, Charlie Powell, Made's Director of Architecture, Tim Brock. We are here to present updates to the proposal at 23 East 9th Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District. This proposal is to renovate the historic townhouse, which includes various front facade improvements, a new roof deck, new bulkhead, and new rear extension. At the November 26th public hearing, the commission expressed consensus support for the window replacement, entry reconfiguration, historic cornice reconstruction, and the new rear addition. We were asked to consider our treatments of the masonry coating at the front facade, the bulkhead massing, the removal of the 1920 skylights, and the reconfiguration of the original rear wall. Our front facade configuration is consistent with our previous proposal. We are still proposing to replace the windows with historically appropriate wood casements and recreate the historic cornice. Our bulkhead massing, however, has been updated. So that what you see in this drawing is the front of a pitched roof that will be clad in lead-coated copper. We've included a diagram and photos to demonstrate the existing conditions of the front facade brick. The existing brick exhibits considerable deterioration with large cracks below sills, damaged bricks above lintels, numerous mismatched brick repairs, and compromised brick surfaces and fire skin. First floor, second floor, the third floor and roof. While we previously proposed a white masonry coating to add a protective layer and unify the mismatched brick, we are now proposing to coat the front facade in a Kime solidolite that matches the existing historic brick color. The previously painted lintels are to be repaired and resurfaced with brownstone stucco. And as you can see in this drawing, that's the front surface or front of the sloped roof with the bulkhead, which would be lead-coated copper. The updated facade treatments are consistent with the other historic townhouses on East 9th Street. As a reminder, we have a side facade that is visible through an alleyway on the east side of the property. It's the existing site plan showing where we plan to remove in our previously proposed site plan. Based on the commissioner's comments, we studied how to best reduce the bulkhead massing while still maintaining the necessary head height in the stairs and elevator overrun. The bulkhead roof is now pitched and set back from the side facade so that the stone coping at the parapet wall can run uninterrupted in front of the new bulkhead. While we were unable to maintain the existing 1920 skylights due to FDNY clearance, which is this hatch and those red dotted lines, there is now pitched glass at the bulkhead's rear wall. This pitched glass will reference the studio skylights in the district and will provide light to the new stairwell. as shown in the roof plan. Our previous proposal showed a squared off bulkhead and a lowered parapet wall at the side facade. Our updated scheme maintains the historic pitched parapet wall, which again now runs in front of the new bulkhead. You can also see better in this drawing the new pitched roof and the pitched rear window wall. A comparison of our previous proposal and updated proposal. In the sightline study, you can see that the bulkhead will not be visible over top the main facade, but will be visible from that alley. And in this section, you can see the reduced bulkhead massing from the previous proposal, which is shown with the red dotted line. At the rear facade, you can see the changes to the bulkhead, which has been updated to the pitched wall with windows that call back to studio skylights. As a reminder, we are proposing to remove the existing extension down below and build a new addition, and then rebuild that top portion of the original rear wall to match the historic configuration. We've provided diagrams and photos to better demonstrate the condition of the rear extension or of the existing rear wall, which we are proposing to rebuild. We've worked with structural engineers at Thailand who have provided LPC staff with a structural memo and who, along with us, is recommending the reconstruction of the rear wall for the following reasons. As it stands, the wall is not structurally sound. Non-original openings on the first and second floor have compromised the lateral stability of the rear wall. This can be seen at severe cracking above the lintels due to movement. 2, much of the existing masonry is already damaged beyond repair. Much of the existing masonry is already damaged beyond repair. At the exterior, there's tar and parging over much of the masonry. This cannot be removed without destroying the face of the brick, which would exacerbate water infiltration and damage. At the interiors, the wood lintels are failing. There is significant water damage, particularly around the fire escape structure, and the rear wall is separating from the side party walls. 3, the process of fixing the existing damage requires significant amount of brick replacement and runs the risk of further damaging the existing masonry. Specifically, needle shoring that would be required to support the rear wall would require removal of large amounts of original masonry, and any existing cracks, bulges, or weak points would be under increased stress while settling into a new support structure. By the time this wall is stabilized and damaged bricks are replaced, there would be almost no historic fabric left, as shown by the light brick portions in this diagram. Reconstructing the rear wall with a modern structural design will stabilize the building and preserve the historic configuration of the rear wall for much longer term than a repair process. To that end, we have updated our proposal from the rear facade being coated in a white masonry coating to being rebuilt out of bricks that match the historic brick. Again, we are proposing to match the existing configuration of the rear wall, including brownstone and stucco lintels and the historic brick cornice at the roof line. I'm going to run through some of our mock montages now so you can see what these design updates look like in context. The proposed bulkhead will not be visible looking directly at the building, which is that sightline study from earlier, and won't be visible past University Place down 9th Street, as shown in these 2 images. From the corner of University and East 9th Street, you can see how the new massing has drastically reduced the visibility of the bulkhead at the sidewall. And you can see kind of our new facade treatments. From further down University, visibility is also reduced with just the copper roof now visible. And then from 10th Street, so looking down that side alley at the back of the house, kind of the narrow strip of rear facade that is visible, you can see kind of what that new bulkhead massing looks like, as well as our new material, so new brick that matches the existing brick. And then from the front, you can see the impacts of the reduced bulkhead massing and maintaining the pitched parapet wall, and kind of the impacts that that has on the visibility and overall impact of the new bulkhead massing. I want to end our presentation here on the front view of the building. Thank you for your time and look forward to questions and deliberation.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any questions, commissioners? All right. Not seeing any questions. I guess yes, Commissioner Jefferson, did you have a question?
It doesn't have to do with the facade on. It has to
Okay.
do with your section
Mhm.
And in your section and page 23, when the entry space is a double-story space,
Correct.
and when I go up the stairs to the second floor, can I look down or is it solid? I was looking,
Sorry.
just curious. You see at the,
So when you go up to the second floor,
yeah, when as you're at the second floor landing, going up to the third floor, can you look down?
this is all open. Or, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
You see, you have a window at the facade.
Up
And then
here,
you go to the landing on the second floor.
right here,
No, go down one more.
here,
Okay, go across.
this,
Where's the staircase going up?
the staircase, so there's a wall that goes down to the base, so to the cellar here. There's a wall on this floor. And then the stair goes up, and then there's a landing, up, landing.
Okay, that landing up,
Yep,
that one. Can you look down across and look outside? Can they look out that window?
out this window here,
No, the one below.
here.
Below, yeah.
Yeah, let me go to the plan
Is
of
there,
that
is there a
floor.
window there?
That's in our appendix.
I'm just curious.
So this is the double height space at that
Ah,
stair,
got it.
and there's an interior window.
Okay,
So you can look out that window from this interior space, but it's a double height kind of mudroom that you enter into.
okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions? All right, let's move to our discussion. Thank you for a clear presentation. So we'll just quickly, I'll summarize what our comments were and where we are today. So at the front facade, a number of commissioners had concerns about the coating that was proposed, both the color and the reversibility of it. And the applicants are now doing a mineral coating that is breathable and will match the color of the underlying brick. I think everybody was very happy with the restoration on the front facade. And then moving up to the roof, there were some comment, most commissioners were comfortable with the removal of the skylights, but some did express a desire to see them incorporated into the design, particularly the back one. And then but all commissioners felt that the bulkhead should be sloped. And so they have sloped the bulkhead, kept the line of the roof line on the side wall, which has dramatically improved the visibility. And then at the back, they are adding this sloped glass which from the view from the back will read as one of the skylights. And I think that all commissioners felt that, questioned the need to reconstruct the top floor and felt that at least the top floor should be maintained unless an engineer's report showed that it needed to be reconstructed. So we've heard a lot today about the conditions and why they're proposing to reconstruct it, but they would match the existing condition and do it in a red brick color. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Chapin, would you like to start?
Sure. I think the applicant has sought to address our concerns, and this building obviously it needs a lot of help. It's the facade brick and particularly the back are in poor condition, and so these improvements are actually going to help preserve the building. I think the change in the color palette and the front and back is going to make it blend in much better with the streetscape, and the change in color on the rooftop addition bulkhead is also going to help it to recede from view. And the bulkhead, I think, is visible from limited vantage points, and it's been reduced in mass. And with the color change, I think it's not a problem. I think that reconstructing the two upper floors is really necessary in this case, and therefore I can approve that. And I think that the design of the rear is appropriate and consistent with other designs and rear yard design, rear additions that we have approved in the past. So I can approve this as presented.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Lutfi.
It's great to get all this information about the condition of the building, and it really does need a considerable amount of shoring up in order to be usable, livable, and stable. Anyway, I think the applicant has done a very good job in coming back to us, updating and reducing the bulkhead, pitching it and setting it back, putting in the artist's studio glass, and the visibility is really reduced significantly, especially from the front. And it's limited from other views. I think I appreciate the fact that the applicant now is going back to match what the color of the bricks originally, both on the front and the rear facade. And the fact that they approximated as well as they could the size of the windows on the top floor of the rear facade, and what the work that they've done on the bottom is really in keeping with what we generally approve. And I just think it's a very good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Master.
Yeah, I think this is a great restoration. I agree with everything that Commissioner Chapin said. The only thing I would say is I think that the removal of the skylight is fine, especially since they reference it in the rear with the pitched glass. Other than that, I can find this appropriate.
Okay, Commissioner Jefferson.
I think this revision, kind of a second pass, is really incredibly well done. And it's refined, the proportions are wonderful, and changing the color of the facade is a plus. Construction of a rooftop addition is appropriate, rear yard addition appropriate. All the issues, I think they handled very well.
Thank you, Commissioner Goldblum.
I don't disagree. The only thing I would suggest is that we'd have Don Friedman take a look at the back facade. If he agrees that it's unsalvageable, then I think that's enough for me. Otherwise, I think the improvements are, as others have noted, appropriate.
All right, Commissioner Ginsburg
Appropriate and approve it.
and Commissioner Chen.
I agree.
All right, so I think we have a consensus. Would you make the motion, Commissioner Chapin?
Yes. In the matter of a certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Manhattan, LPC 2501-663, 23 East 9th Street, Greenwich Village Historic District, a house built in 1843 and remodeled in the 20th century. Application is to construct rooftop and rear additions, modify the front and side facades, reconstruct the rear facade, remove skylights and a section of the floor, and excavate the cellar. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Greenwich Village Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed restoration of the missing cornice and installation of the multi-light casement windows matching those in place in the early 20th century will support a unified composition in keeping with the character of the building's existing period style. That the proposed entrance infill will be simply designed and in keeping with entrance infill found at early 20th century row house renovations in terms of placement, proportions, and materials. That the application of a tinted breathable mineral coating on the brickwork will help conceal large sections of mismatched brick colors at portions of the front facade and will return the facade closer to its historic appearance. That the studio skylights to be removed are not visible from any public thoroughfares. That the sloped form, metal cladding, and glazed wall of the proposed rooftop bulkhead will recall the historic presence of studio skylights at the building. That the rooftop bulkhead will only be seen between taller buildings in the foreground at a distance and over the side facade from a gap in the street wall, and will not be seen over the front facade from directly across the street. That the proposed rooftop addition will be set back from the front and rear facades, and the rear yard addition will not rise to the top floor of the building, thereby maintaining a sense of the building's original volume. That the proposed rooftop and rear yard additions will only be seen from public thoroughfares at the rear of the building and limited oblique views through alleys within the context of secondary facades. That the depth of the proposed rear yard addition located between a larger L extension and the corner apartment building will not diminish the central green space. That the design of the rear yard addition featuring brick cladding with a two-story opening, multi-light metal windows and door assemblies, and a spandrel will reflect the building's residential scale and historic floor divisions. That the reconstruction of the top two floors of the rear facade is warranted due to its deteriorated condition. That the top two floors will be rebuilt to match the historic conditions in terms of plane, materials, finishes, and details. And the top floor will match the placement and size through the original masonry openings and the corbelled brick cornice. That the proposed openings at the third floor will approximate the existing openings, and the combined door and window assembly will harmonize with the overall facade design. That the removal of a section of flooring at the vestibule behind the front facade will be imperceptible from the sidewalk, and that the proposed work will not detract from the significant historic and architectural character of the historic district.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin, Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Jefferson. Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 8 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
So that's approved. Thank you very much. To the next item.
We'll now move to our public hearing agenda, starting with public hearing item number 1, LPC 25-04644, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 140, Lot 7503, 345 Adams Street, the Brooklyn Edison Building individual landmark. This is a Renaissance Revival style office building designed by Mackenzie Voorhees and Mellon and built in 1922 to 26. The application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of signage and luminaires.
Hi, good morning, Commissioners. Good morning. My name is Jackie Poo Duvalin of JPD Preservation Consulting. Thank you, Landmark staff and commissioners for hearing this application today. I'm here today with Sherida Paulson and Robert Bianco of PKSB Architects and Jeff Kay of Must Development. This is 345 Adams Street, a 14-story, the 14-story Brooklyn Edison building, individual landmark that stands at the intersection of Adams, Pearl, and Willoughby Streets in the busy commercial and civic center of Brooklyn. Here you can see it located on this map and this aerial view. The building was built in 2 phases. The original structure fronting Willoughby Street was constructed in 1922, and in 1926, an addition was added, extending along the north side of Adams Street. It was originally located on the southeast corner of a larger block, which you can see somewhat in this photo on the right, where I'm circling. In the 1950s, the buildings to the west, you can see in this photo on the right, in the 1950s, the buildings to the west of the building were demolished and the Adams Street facade became its most public-facing facade. In 2008, Must Development purchased the lower 2 stories of the building. At that time, this is what it looked like. These photos are from 2007. You can see there's a considerably less development of this facade than the other facades that were the original primary facades. And you also had this scar left over from a much smaller building that was originally next door. So to remedy that and to make it more welcoming as for commercial tenants and for the public, Must Development created this very elaborate redesign of the lower floors to create very active commercial spaces that engage the very wide open commercial pedestrian plaza that's outside on Adams Street. Incidentally, this facade is constructed of, it's stucco It's not real stone, but it does take its inspiration from the design of the arched openings on the other facades, at least where there was enough height to accommodate. Here you see the Pearl Street and Willoughby facades in their existing condition. Here's some photographs giving you the context of this building, its location, and how very far away you can get across this, this widened Adams Street to be able to see this building from very far away. Additional photos of the walking plazas that are nearby. Just for some context, in this part of Brooklyn, this busy downtown part of Brooklyn, there's always been a lot of large and internally illuminated signage. Here's a couple of historic photos of Pearl Street, Fulton Street nearby to show you that. For context, here's some current conditions of signage nearby. This is at Fulton Street, just a bit south from our building. Additional context, this is along Myrtle Avenue and J Street nearby. Also for context, we looked at, because this is an individual landmark building, we looked at what other individual landmark buildings are doing in terms of signage nearby. So you see the Old Navy, that signage that was approved with a certificate of appropriateness. That's illuminated signage. That's on Fulton Street. Also in Fulton Street are, let's see, 450 to 458, where you see the Modell sign. That was a C of A approval. And also 450 to 458. I need reading glasses. That was staff level approvals, where you see the T-Mobile sign. Additional individual landmark buildings, 44 Court Street, where you see the Lot Less sign, that was a staff level approval. 50 Court Street, the Starbucks and Equinox, that was a certificate of appropriateness. And below that, 210 Joralemon Street, that was a certificate of appropriateness for some illuminated signage. We also looked at recent approvals for internally illuminated signage. These are examples in Manhattan, but we think they're still relevant. This is 126 Fifth Avenue, the Athleta store, and 115 Fifth Avenue, the Aritzia. Now for just some context and showing you what the existing conditions look like, here we're looking head on at the Adams Street facade and the existing large internally illuminated signage, which was there before designation. Also the awnings that are at the second floor. Here's some close-up views of what's presently there, the signage attached to these perforated metal spandrel panels. Just giving you context here. Now we're looking at Willoughby Street elevation. There's an awning, or sort of former awning framing that's still there that we're not proposing to remove at this time. But this is what that still looks like. And this is Pearl Street, where you have the greatest extent of extant historic fabric in each of these openings. So the proposal on that street will be very different. And with that, I'd like to introduce the architect, Sharita Paulson.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sharita Paulson from PKSB Architects, representing the owners, and very grateful to have Jackie on board this team, so I don't have to do all the research. But the approach that we've taken to a master plan here is greatly inspired by the proliferation of a variety of signage on the Adams Street facade. Whereas Pearl Street, which is the upper portion of this plan, is quite quiet. It's a narrower street. It's a largely intact facade with some gaps, which we propose to assist. Willoughby is interesting because it's a plaza. It's not a car street. And while the marquee was that overhangs and is in front of the historic facades. The historic facades and infill are intact. And so the marquee is, I guess, beneficial to the restaurant tenant, but this plan is flexible in its approach to that. Adams Street, on the other hand, so historic that it dates to 2009, 2010. And it is pretty much fully leased up. Its tenancy is strong, and it has the benefit of very bright, very highway-like signage. And so the goal here is to regularize that signage to make it in scale to the essentially 8-lane highway that sits in front of the building, but standardizes the signage. So on the ground floor, you can see in the toned areas, the portions of the ground floor that are controlled by the Muss group. And in the white is the city-controlled portion, which provides the access to the upper floors. So we are not including the entrances and lobby spaces on Pearl and Adams in this proposal. And on the second floor, there is a very large space on the left side, which is part of the commercial tenancy. And then the ground floor tenant has the frontage along Willoughby. And there is another tenant that has a portion of the second floor that faces Pearl Street. And you can see that there are a number of exit stairs that sit behind windows that would ordinarily provide views into usable space, but they are not usable. And the existing conditions on Adams, as Jackie just showed you, it's exuberant. There's a lot of different colors. We have signs on angles, signs on placards, awnings of different colors and forms, and blacked out windows. The portion at the corner where the Kava sign is, those arched windows have a lattice in front of glazed areas. And what we're proposing is to allow for 2 types of signage on the Adams Street facade. 36-inch tall letters on rails in front of the spandrels. And if it's 1 line, and if they want 2 lines of text, it's in the same space, but 2 smaller lines of lettering. And then allowing for the Kava signage to remain above the spandrel. On Willoughby, we're showing the existing, and we have 2 alternatives. If the marquee is retained, there would be no additional signage on the storefronts, the 3 storefronts to the right, but there would be a provision to continue what they currently have, which is little hanging signs beneath the marquee. If the marquee were removed, then we would propose to allow for new signage at a smaller scale. These are only 18-inch letters, and those sit in front of the spandrel. And the spandrels on this building are quite detailed and very, very beautiful. And on the Pearl Street side, this is more curative than anything else. We're proposing to allow for signage only where there are entrances, and also to provide for louvers within a specified area of the storefronts. There have been insertions of air conditioning units that stick out over the sidewalk, louvers that just cut through the windows. And so we've designated areas where those could occur. And that's also due to the fact that the Adams Street facade actually has access to ventilating equipment and has louvers provided for within their design, but these historic storefronts do not. And they're proposed. And now the up close and personal. There are a variety of doors, and we are proposing to allow for vinyl applique in the display windows and on the doors. And so this blow up shows center doors with minimal, pretty much in accord with commission standards for the doors and windows on the ground floor. And on the second floor, which is a community facility use, it's an education tenancy. Those would be allowed the larger stick-on letters. And this illustrates the double row signage proposed on Adams with side door. And then this one is the two storefronts or infill that don't have tenancy behind them. They're doors and stairs. And so these allow for the screening that has been adopted recently by the commission. And at the corner, there's the option to address the Cava sign, which in this instance, if the louvering grillage is retained, the sign would be above. And this one would allow for the sign to be relocated to the spandrel. And this is on the Willoughby Street side. So again, if the marquee remains, no signage is proposed. If the marquee is removed, then where there's a door, sign would be allowed. And on Pearl Street, paired doors, the smaller signage in front of the spandrel. And then these illustrate the louvers, which are below the spandrel in the uppermost portion of the infill, both where there's all window or doors. And we have a couple of bays that we would propose to allow for a new infill below the spandrel that would regularize doors and display windows and new louvers. And I don't know what that says.
Yeah, just hit okay. When in doubt, hit okay.
Well. What do you think?
I know.
And this just illustrates the different signage. All of it is internally illuminated signage, 36 inches or 2 rows of 15 on the Adams Street facade. And now I'm stuck. And 18 inches for a single sign and 2 smaller ones taking up the same area, all on rails in front of the spandrels. What am I doing? I'll just do this. Oh, and there's blade signs. Adams Street currently has blade signs on every pier. We're proposing the same within the commission's guidelines and rules. And the awnings, the awnings were in the previous one. Yeah, and they're just fixed awnings with a small skirt that allows for a sign on the skirt, and they're fixed. And this is a section for the louvers, which would be painted to match the store. So,
All right, thank you. All right, any questions, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Chen.
Could you
and I
explain?
apologize, can you speak up? My
Sure.
ears got totally plugged up by the flu.
No problem. On the three different facades, and you have different size fonts. You have 36 and then 18, almost half on the other side. And also on the Willoughby side, it's a different scale. The logic, can you explain the rationale, logic, and coming up why the need for 36-inch, for example, on one side versus half on the other?
I think there are two parts to that response. One is that the Willoughby facade and the Pearl Street facade are the historic facades. They have smaller spandrels. They are quieter streets. And we have on the Willoughby side, the provision of the marquee that was installed before designation that provides a bit of street furniture. So we don't see that there's a reason, and there's much more pedestrian foot traffic. So you can actually see those signs by walking around. On the Adams Street facade, the context is A, non-historic, and B, it's on an 8-lane highway, basically, very busy, very noisy. And I learned when I went to the community board hearing that all vehicular traffic that's heading toward the downtown, toward Gerolman Street, is directed, if they're going to these buildings, is directed to make a U-turn so that they can approach the buildings on this side of the street. So all cars, it's a very heavy vehicular use area. And one of the points that was interesting to me is that while commercial space owners and landlords have struggled, this building has been fully occupied since these storefronts were added to the Adams Street facade. And there isn't a lot of pedestrian traffic, but the bottom line is these small food service tenants seem to be very successful here with what looks almost like highway signage. And so they're visible. They can, with the blade signs, be seen from a pedestrian viewpoint. But if you're driving by, and I have driven by many times now, my grandson's a few blocks away. So it's interesting to me that this more vibrant, brighter, larger signage is appropriate on this facade. We would not propose this for the other facades. They're much quieter.
All right. Yes, Commissioner Lutfi.
Just to follow up on that, Commissioner Chen's question. So there's a cacophony of signage here. It's not Times Square, but everyone's, the sizes are different. And this is successful, as you just said. So what are the sizes? What are the sizes of the largest and the smallest? Because my sense is that people driving by are getting on the bridge. So they're not the clients of the stores, of the retail. The clients are the pedestrians, people who work or potentially live in the area. So what is the current size of the largest and smallest signage on Adams? Because to me, 3 feet is huge for signage, so I don't quite understand it.
Well, that's a good question because, and one of the things that we noted is that the occupants of the buildings on Adams Street are the different city agencies, there's law, tenancies, other things. So there are a lot of people, and there's the hotel. So there's a lot of people who drive in and go to those buildings. And they have convenient small food service without having to go over to Metro Tech or J Street, which is less accessible. So in terms of being aware that there is anything there, the size apparently does matter. Some of these are wilder fonts and other things. But in terms of the scale, 36 inches is, I think, not terribly big in the context of these storefronts and infill components. They're within the spandrels themselves. And as you can see, what some of these tenants have done is go beyond the spandrels by either doing a placard behind their lettering so that it effectively makes the sign almost 40 inches tall, or it's running on a diagonal, which expands the overall impression of the signage. So we think that it's in scale with the infill that's there. It's visible, but it would no longer be outside any of these formats.
Yeah, I
and-
appreciate
And would
what-
fit.
I appreciate what you're saying, but I think that my question was, what is the font size?
The
on-
font size, it's,
Of the smallest and the largest?
the font size of the largest is 36 inches.
Mhm.
And the font size, oh, and this is only on the Adams side. Yeah, only on the Adams side is 36 inches for the total height of the letter, which is then on a rail, excuse me. And then if it's the double one, it is, let's see. Sorry. Yes.
The elevation drawing?
The existing condition.
Oh, photos.
So Kava, for example, is 42 inches tall today. It would be reduced to 36 inches. Whereas the pizza, the Panera bread, which is a double, currently is approximately 36 inches total with the logo and the lettering. We're not providing for the logos on the sign bands. This is just the names of the stores.
And the kitchen?
Dave's Kitchen is smaller, but their overall height of the placard behind,
Yeah, I don't care about
the lettering is smaller. That's about, I believe, 20 inches. I'm sorry.
All right, any other questions? All right, we're going to move to public testimony and we'll come back to you, and I'll note that there is no one in the hearing room to speak on this item, so I will turn it over to Stephen Thompson to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. If we have any members of the Zoom who would like to offer public testimony, please use the raise hand function. Okay, seeing. I will note that Community Board 2 recommends approval and noting, sorry, it's just reloading the resolution. With a note of appreciation for the proactive initiative to enhance the streetscape aesthetics and stimulate the local economy.
Great, thank you. All right, commissioners, any final questions before we move to our discussion then? Sherrod, is there any other final comment you'd like to make before we move to our discussion?
I just was appreciative that the community board had studied the application carefully, and they appreciated the effort to regularize the signage in the context of what is a more exuberant approach today.
Great, thank you. All right, let's begin our discussion. Commissioner Chen, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion on this individual landmark, which was a recent designation. And when we held our designation hearing, Must Development came and testified and talked about the incredible importance of flexibility for storefronts. And we had a discussion about the nature of this building, the large size of it, how Adams Street was not intended to be a street facade. At this point, it is now, and that there are modern storefronts that were designed to be compatible with the historic storefronts on the other two facades. So it is a very large building with three street-facing facades. And in the middle of commercial activity on Fulton, you have a lot of commercial activity, including other individual landmarks where we've allowed some very large signage in the spandrels and above spandrels. And on the other side, the Brooklyn Borough Hall Skyscraper Historic District, where we also have not only allowed signage and storefront changes in buildings that historically had retail, but also in Brooklyn Borough Hall, which did not have retail and was adapted, and we allowed for flexibility there so that it could fit in with the context. And so I think we felt pretty comfortable given the conditions and at this building, the level of historic fabric, where it was, where it wasn't, the size of it, and our history of working with property owners, that we could work very cooperatively to help the owner get what they needed to be able to maintain tenancy and viability. And so we have an application today, and I thank the applicant, the owner, for coming in to take care of a master plan so that we can continue to work efficiently together as we move forward. And this is a plan that recognizes that there are different conditions on these different streets, and seeks to regularize the signage while allowing for a different treatment on the different facades. And that is it both in terms of size and placement. And then they're also seeking approval for some louvers where they can't be accommodated anywhere but through the window. And so we have a number of signs to look at with the signage in the spandrel, the signage above, in some cases, blade signs and window graphics. And then there are the two storefronts where they would do graphics to obscure back of house activities. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Master, would you like to start this one?
Sure. First of all, I want to commend the applicant. This is a recently designated building, but I think the applicant has been very proactive in coming in and presenting this master plan, which I think really tries to regularize the signage while providing flexibility. And I like how they really took into consideration the differences in the different street facades, something different for Adams Street, allowing a little bit more, whereas being respectful to the fact that Willoughby and Pearl Street are more historic. So I first want to note that I think this is a very large building, and because of the scale of the building, I think that we can accommodate a little bit more signage and variety of signage here. I'll start on the Adams side, noting that it is a recent, as they noted, Adams is recent, 2010, and that it does have strong tenancy and multiple small retail stores. I think what they're saying is that on the spandrel, the limit for the largest sign is going to be 36 inches. And then if you want two lines, it'll be 18 inches. To me, that sounds reasonable, especially given that there are some signs now that are larger than 36 inches. So I think this regulation, regularizing the sign is a good idea. In addition, I think on the Adams sign, I think we're going to be allowing blade signs. And my understanding also from the presentation is that these blade signs are going to be within commission rules. And so to me, that makes a lot of sense. On the Willoughby side, I think there's two proposals. There's going to either have a marquee or new 18-inch letter signs in front of the spandrels. And that makes sense. You can have one or the other. On the Pearl side, I think we have louvers on specified areas on windows. And I think that also regularizes, and I think that's going to be something that's necessary on Pearl Street. And I think they asked for new infill below spandrels, which seems to make sense. I think and then the vinyl applique. I think the vinyl applique on Adams Street, I think that's also, they mentioned within commission standards. So that sounds reasonable to me. Overall, I think they've done a really wonderful job in regularizing and I think sticking to what we typically do approve. So I can find this appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson.
Yeah. At first, I had difficulty understanding the concept of the system, but once it was explained that there are two separate streets, different activity in each street, I think the system that they have developed makes sense. And I think the master plan makes sense also.
Okay. Commissioner Goldblum.
Yeah. This is, if this were a different setting or a different part of the building, I think that I'd have a different view on it. I think there's an awful lot of signage being proposed here, and it's rather large. And that's not what we normally see for individually designated buildings. But the fact that this facade is completely new and was never designed to be seen this way, I think lowers the temperature for me and allows for it to be considered. I do think 36 inches is awfully large, even for highway signage. But if everyone else thinks it's okay, I won't get in the way.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
I find this a thoughtful proposal and appropriate.
Okay. Commissioner Chin.
Yeah, I'm in the context of the treatment for three different facades. I think is appropriate, and I think the one thing that I will have not been discussed is obviously between the marquee or no marquee. I personally would prefer the marquee to be retained. So, but that's just my personal opinion.
Okay. Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I think a master plan is, timely and appropriate for this building. It's, currently got a sort of a chaotic mess of signage. And I think that the size of the signage is warranted by the size of the building and appropriate for it. And the lighted signage also, I think, is appropriate. And the blade signs are reasonably placed and not excessive. And the use of vinyl also, I think, in certain areas is fine. And they're, not placing things where they have canopies already. I think all together, it's an appropriate plan for this building and well done.
Commissioner Lutfi.
I would like to thank the applicant, as other commissioners have, for doing a master plan to somewhat regularize the signage on this very important building. And I also want to commend the applicant for the work that they have done in general in downtown Brooklyn. As it has evolved over the past decades into a really vibrant place for people to live and do business in, and just participate in the broad range of activities that take place in downtown Brooklyn. And now actually the scope of what downtown Brooklyn actually encompasses has expanded considerably. All of this is very important. And I think because of this evolution, it's really important to look at what's going on in this individual landmark within that context. Because now this facade, this rear facade, that was never important, that was scarred, as has been indicated, actually functions more like a front facade, because there is so much activity and foot traffic that takes place on it. And as I mentioned, and as was confirmed, the people who take advantage of this retail are not driving. First of all, you can't even park in this area. You have to take a subway and then walk. And if you live or work here, because it is, I would say, primarily a pedestrian area, you learn about and get to know, and you sample everything that's within the area. So that the whole concept of signage, I think, and the regularization of it needs to be addressed from my perspective within that new concept. And I think we need to look at this side of the building within that context. It's no longer a rear facade. So I think I am in favor with so many of what has been proposed here, but I really don't feel that there should be a vast difference in scale and look and feel between what happens on the other facades and this facade. If it needed a minor adjustment, which I'm not so sure it does, because some of the smaller signage on this side is quite visible, that would be one thing. But this isn't supposed to be, highway signage. And, it's not a billboard, but I really do feel that it's too large. So I would really recommend, well, I'm absolutely fine with what's going on the other sides. I would like to recommend that the applicant work with staff to adjust the size of the signage on this facade of the building. And I believe that the examples that were shown of what we have approved, especially in Manhattan, support this. So that's my recommendation.
All right, thank you. And I do appreciate your thoughts about it relating all the way around and being consistent, since the storefront changes were intended to be harmonious when they added the storefronts on Adams. But I still think there's a different architecture on Adams Street. I think it really, even the upper portion of it looks more secondary, and the way the upper portion and the retail engage is very different than the much more kind of intense integration that you see on the other two facades. And I think there's a lot of pedestrianization around here, but I think you can't ignore that big street, and it does change the character of this. So while I appreciate your thoughts, I think that the kind of treating this differently works in this context. So I think we do have enough to support it as is. Commissioner Master, would you go ahead and make the motion?
In the matter of LPC 25-04644, 345 Adams Street, the Brooklyn Edison Building individual landmark, a Renaissance revival style office building designed by Mackenzie Voorhees and Mellon and built in 1922-26. Application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of signage and louvers. I recommend approval, finding that establishing a master plan for signage will provide for a cohesive treatment throughout the base of the building and will support the adaptive reuse of the first and second floors for commercial use. That the building can support numerous signage types, including large-scale raceway signage and bracket signs due to the building's large-scale, double-height storefront openings and the siting of most of the installations at the Adams Street facade, which is technically the back of the building. That the proposed internally illuminated raceway signage will be primarily located in front of spandrels or in front of transoms at select bays and will be attached at areas of plain masonry returns or non-historic metal panels and slats, and therefore will have minimal impact on significant architectural features. That the internally illuminated signage will utilize 1 or 2 lines of text and will feature larger sign lettering at the non-historic and more visible Adams Street storefronts and smaller size lettering at Willoughby and Pearl Street facades, thereby reducing the visual impact at the historic storefronts. That the proposed bracket signs with concealed downlighting will be well scaled and simply designed and will be installed at mortar joints at plain areas of masonry piers and will be reversible. That the proposed vinyl signage and graphics will be easily reversible and limited to covering certain percentages of glazing at storefront and transoms. That the existing awnings at the non-historic Adams Street storefronts and hanging flags at the Willoughby Street marquees were present at the time of designation, and that the continued use of these signage types at select locations will not detract from the building. That the Pearl Street facade already features through window louvers at select locations, and the proposed louvers will require minimal alterations to the existing steel windows and will be finished to match the window framing. Therefore, the proposed master plan will help to regularize these conditions. And that the cumulative amount of signage will not overwhelm the building or detract from the special architectural and historic character of this individual landmark.
Thank you, Commissioner Ginsburg. Would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Nay.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 7 in favor and 1 opposed, the motion passes.
That's approved. Thank you. We'll move to the public hearing agenda. Well, you're in the public hearing agenda. We'll move to item number 2.
Public hearing item number 2 is LPC 25-03324, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 613, Lot 44, 184 7th Avenue South in the Greenwich Village Historic District. This is an altered commercial appendage to an apartment house designed by Lafayette A. Goldstone and built in 1908. Application is to legalize the painting of the facade and installation of a mural without Landmarks Preservation Commission permits and to install an awning. The remote presenter is ready to start. You may begin.
Okay, just switching to the remote presenter.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to this presentation today. Sorry, one second. Amazing. Today we're here to discuss 184 7th Ave South, New York, 10014. Also the building Little Sweet Tree.
Please state your name for the record.
Oh, apologies. My name is Ellie Ross, and I'll be presenting. I'm one of the co-founders of Little Sweet Tree, and I'll be presenting on behalf of the business today.
Thank you.
To provide some context, we are located just south of 11th Street on 7th Ave and also just south of Greenwich Avenue. To discuss some of the streetscape context, we have included some images of the block that we are on and of the neighboring businesses. We are definitely located on a pretty eclectic block with lots of variety of context of different one-story buildings, the backs of large apartment buildings, and new mixed-use buildings next door. And so you'll see the Psychic next door, the views from across the street looking onto our unit, and just a few different images of the building overall. Now moving on to specifically the historic conditions of this block and this unit specifically, you'll see that there is a history of 7th Avenue South cutting through the street grid, leaving leftover parts of lots where one-story buildings were constructed. And as you can see in all three of these images across the 1930s, the 40s, the 60s, in all of these images, this particular unit has always had an awning. And that definitely added to kind of that charm and eclectic nature of this building, but also the block that it has been on. Now, to continue talking about some of more recent but still, historic conditions of this building, as you'll see, this unit has always really struggled with graffiti, and this is something that we were kind of aware of that could be something that we faced. If you look at the image on the top right, you'll see that there is a lot of graffiti, a lot of stickers, and pretty much this building has been in pretty bad condition and just hasn't been repaired, or no one has taken the time to really give the love to this unit that it has needed. Actually, once we had signed the lease and given it a new coat of paint, in a similar yellow to what was already there, we actually had gotten tagged with, different graffiti artists. And obviously, as a small business owner, that was definitely devastating. But once we were able to put this piece of art, this mural up, knock on wood, we have not gotten tagged, and we've been able to prevent graffiti on this unit. But it's also allowed us to support a local artist and just bring a beautiful piece of art to the vibrant neighborhood of the West Village. Now, kind of talking about other precedents and thinking like specifically on historic one-story units. In the West Village neighborhood, and just on 7th Ave South specifically, there have always been really fun ways that single-story buildings have been a part of the neighborhood. So on the right, you'll see Rikers, which was a chain of diners. And if you look closely, you'll see that there is actually a huge cow on top of the building and then a huge mural above that. The other examples for like the Nut Club and Cool Motor, they've always had like really fun and eclectic signage, and just bring an extra level of vibrancy to those buildings, and to the street in particular. Now looking at the precedents of one-story units in more modern day, today, these are some of the images that we took of units that are around 7th Ave South and also just in the general West Village neighborhood. On to the right, you'll see the iconic Village Cigars, which is this beautiful, bold, bright red which happens to also have, a lot of stickers and other signage on it. The Psychic that you'll see on the left is actually directly our neighbor, but they also have really fun signage, and it definitely adds to the block overall. You'll see Milk Bar, which is, white. It definitely stands out in the sea of buildings, and Agave also has some pretty fun signage as well. Other precedents continued. We just wanted to kind of highlight some examples of businesses who have done similar things to what we've done and, really add to that eclectic nature of the West Village and the vibrancy of the neighborhood. So most notably would probably be Caliente Cab on 7th Ave South. They had a taxi cab, a giant margarita structure that is still there to this day. And it's just really colorful and bright and is an interesting use of, the facade that they have. You'll see on 192 7th Ave South, directly next to that image, just a large mural in that surrounding immediate area. So definitely, showing that this area has had a lot of murals, and it definitely is a part of the history and the nature of the neighborhood. And then you have Two Boots Pizza, which is also another iconic institution of the West Village, and they have also, painted their facade red, have this yellow signage. Coincidentally, both of our colors happen to be yellow and red. And then on the far right, you'll see examples of other striped awnings in the West Village neighborhood as well. So thinking about just the work completed overall, we wanted to kind of round out how we took the unit and where we took the unit to now. Basically, the unit was struggling, filled with graffiti and stickers, and just wasn't in the best condition. And we were able to brighten that up and be able to, knock on wood, prevent that graffiti, replace the awning that was already there with our business's awning. And overall, we like to, our community, and we like to think that, we've definitely added to the neighborhood and are able to blend in into the exciting nature of the West Village. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any questions on this one? Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
So I have two questions. First of all, this work was done without a permit. What was the reason that it was done this way?
Yes, absolutely. So the context here is that myself and my husband who started Little Sweet Treat, this was our first time ever entering retail. And so we had done, our own set of Google research, but also talking to neighboring businesses on the street. And we had actually also asked our landlord about painting and adding the awning, and at every single point, the guidance and direction that we were given was that this was allowed. Obviously, throughout this process, we have found that to be untrue. And so we, have actively worked in a very quick manner to ensure that we are abiding by the legalities of the Landmark Committee. So I want to apologize for not knowing the rules well enough to have gotten permits prior to doing this work. But it was definitely a lack of knowledge and with our surrounding council.
Thank you. The other question is, was the paint used a breathable masonry paint?
I apologize. I'm not familiar with what breathable masonry paint is.
Well, if you don't use a breathable masonry paint, water will get behind the paint and in freeze thaw start to damage the masonry. And so it's important to use that when you're painting masonry.
We had an expert on outdoor facades come and survey what we were painting, and we did use the appropriate type of paint for this outside structure.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Jefferson.
On slide number 9, did you change the doorway on the from the previous condition to the new one?
No, the doorway is the same in these two images.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? All right, let's move to public testimony. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak on this item? Noting that there isn't, I will turn it over to Stephen Thompson to see if we have any remote participants.
If any attendees on Zoom would like to offer remote testimony, please use the raise hand function. Christina Burton-Conroy, I'll be promoting you to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute yourself and state your name for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now, had we reviewed them prior to construction, we would have supported, without modification, the minimal changes that were made to this little remnant of a building. The paint color is appropriate. The retractable awning is typical of what's been on the building for years, and the mural is quirky but unobtrusive. It all seems very characteristic of the village, and we therefore support legalization. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next will be Dina Tass-Winter. I will be promoting you to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Dina Tass-Winter, and I'm speaking today on behalf of Village Preservation. Village Preservation finds this awning and painted mural to be acceptable at this location. However, we are very concerned about this work being undertaken without permits. It's surprising that the applicant didn't acknowledge that the work was illegal during the presentation, and also very surprising that the owners in the Greenwich Village Historic District seem to not be aware of the requirements. We want to ensure that there are systems in place to prevent applicants from doing work without approval and later seeking legalization. There needs to be a penalty structure that dissuades noncompliance with appropriate procedures. We support small businesses, and we acknowledge that they often have tight timelines and tight cash flow, and we appreciate the LPC's Business Express service, which helps such establishments receive their permits more quickly. But it is problematic that there do not appear to be any real repercussions in place for this type of disregard of the procedure. This is a larger issue that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, we face a situation where work such as facade repainting is effectively not being regulated. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, I see we have Emily. Emily, I will be promoting you to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute yourself and state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Emily Vermillier. I am a longtime resident of the West Village, and I want to speak in support of Little Sweet Treat. I happened across the awning and mural around the time when they were opening, and I thought it was just a perfect addition to the neighborhood and keeping that vibrancy and kind of fun artistry of why I think we all love the West Village. And so I wanted to share my support. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, we have Christina's iPhone. I think that might be a participant who's already spoken. If there are any other members on Zoom who would like to offer testimony, please use the raise hand function. Seeing none, I will note that the commission did receive 7 letters in support of the application. And Manhattan Community Board 2 recommends approval of the restoration and color of the facade and approval of the lighting of the entablature, provided that it is regulated to be no brighter than a, quote, glow.
All right, thank you. So is there anything you'd like to say before we move to our discussion? I'm addressing the applicant.
No, I just want to thank everyone for providing their testimony. I think we completely understand, like, again, the research that we had done, we wish we had known. But you know, as a small business owner, like, as we continue to be a part of this neighborhood, we want to abide by the rules. We never want to do anything that is against community and commission landmark commission laws. But we look forward to being a part of this neighborhood for years to come.
All right, thank you very much. All right, any final questions, commissioners? All right, we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Jefferson, would you make a motion to close the hearing? Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so this is an application to legalize the painting of the facade, excuse me, the installation of a mural without Merck's Preservation Commission permits and to install an awning. And the applicant has presented the context of this site, which is on 7th Avenue South, which was when that avenue cut through the street grid, did leave these little triangular shaped lots where which has created a sort of more vibrant character, commercial character along 7th Avenue South. And we have also considered that context in reviewing applications, everything from new buildings where we've allowed people to express the more quirky nature of the avenue and in addition with storefront changes. And so this is an application to paint this little sort of remnant of a building and with the mural and the paint color and then install the awning. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Lutfi, would you like to start this one?
You know, I do want to echo the fact that it is very unfortunate that we're seeing this project after the fact, that the work has already been done. You know, 7th Avenue South is very well marked with street signs that are brown and indicate that this is a historic district. So it's kind of, I don't know how you would not know. That said, of course, I'm going to look at this within the broader context of what exists today now at this site and what's in this bustling and very visually active and colorful section of 7th Avenue South. It does change as you go further north and as you go further south. It's a wonderful, positive cacophony of different expressions that I really think define this part of 7th Avenue South in an exuberant and wonderful way. And I think that the applicant has actually, with a very small footprint and an issue that is graffiti on an important wall of this small footprint, has done a good job of problem solving, how they deal with their problem and contribute to the branding of what it is that they do as a commercial user, and also in a way that fits in with the broader context. I mean, I think it's a very good job. The painting on the wall is terrific and colorful yet understated, and almost dainty in its own way, which complements and reinforces the unique size of this space. And I think the awning size works well, and I'm in full agreement with I think it was the community board statement about the need to modulate the lighting. And I think that Commissioner Ginsburg raised a point that the applicant should probably look into, which is, you know, the issue of the paint, so that you know, what is here now is going to be not only long lasting, but not have a detrimental impact on the facade of the building. But I can approve this wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Commissioner Master.
I agree with Commissioner Lutfi's statements, as well as the statements of the Victorian Society. I can find this appropriate.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Okay, this is a particularly a particular urban context and a mixed bag of design elements. And I think what we're approving is just the color, and I can approve the color.
Commissioner Goldblum,
I agree. I think it's appropriate.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
I agree with the previous, all of my fellow commissioners. I think if this had come to us before it was done, we would be enthusiastically supporting it. I like the artwork on the wall, which seems to be solving the graffiti problem and adding, so that I found this appropriate and approvable, even if slightly unfortunate that they didn't come to us before.
Commissioner Chin.
Yeah, I agree with all the comments of the commissioners and also the testimonies. Procedurally, I mean, to Commissioner Ginsburg's point about using the right paint, obviously it needs to be repainted. Normally, murals are refreshed every few months, meaning that, you know, it fades, it gets dirty. What is our procedure in terms of if they were to do a new mural, do they need to come back to us for a new
If they
approval?
were
or
to
is-
change, if they were to do a new mural, a
Mhm.
different design, they would have to come back to the Landmarks Preservation Commission for permits. Yeah.
Okay, and so.
If they touch up existing,
Yeah.
if they just repaint the yellow, the same yellow, they do not need to come back. That's ordinary maintenance. Okay. Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I mean, as has been stated by others and the testimony as well, obviously, we continue to try to make sure people do not go forward without approval. But in this case, certainly, it is something I could have approved if it were presented. And I think that, you know, it's a taxpayer building and you can kind of understand with the graffiti and other things why the applicant, you know, did the things that they did, which ended up, you know, actually being appropriate. So I can approve it even though it, you know, it was done without permission.
Okay. All right. So we have a consensus to support this, but I do really want to underscore the importance of coming to us or making a phone call or writing an email to us before you begin work to really understand what your responsibilities are. In this case, given the context, the commission is finding this work appropriate because they would have found it appropriate in the first instance if you had come to us. But that's not always the case. There are times when people make decisions to do work without the benefit of our guidance and our permitting. And it's work that we cannot approve. And so there's money spent doing the work, then having to redo the work, in addition to any penalties that you may incur, as well as in this case, for example, we could have looked at the paint and determined whether it was a breathable paint and made a suggestion in the permitting process that could have aided in the long-term preservation of your building, not to say that this paint will cause cracking over time, but we don't know because we didn't see the product. So that's the kind of benefit you have when you come to us in advance, in addition to your legal responsibilities. So we do encourage you to please call us or email us if you have any questions about whether or not you need a permit. But in the meantime, we'll go ahead and approve this. Commissioner Lutfi, would you make the motion?
In the matter of docket 25-03324, 184 7th Avenue South, Greenwich Village Historic District, an altered commercial appendage to an apartment house designed by Lafayette A. Goldstone and built in 1908. The application is to legalize the painting of the facade and installation of a mural without Landmarks Preservation Commission permits and to install an awning. I note that the 7th Avenue South was created after World War I as an avenue which cut through the street grid, that its construction left unusually shaped lots on which fragments of buildings remained, and that a variety of other building types were constructed, including one-story taxpayers, many of which have been altered and replaced over time. I also note that 7th Avenue South is a highly commercial thoroughfare and features a wide variety of building types and signage. I recommend approval finding that the painting of the storefront and masonry wall did not obscure any significant architectural or historic features, that the appendage is small in scale and has limited street presence, and when seen between the larger adjacent buildings and within the eclectic commercial character of 7th Avenue South, the mural and bright yellow color of the storefront do not overwhelm or detract from the streetscape, that the mural is located at an area of plain masonry at an exposed party wall that angles back from the sidewalk, further reducing its impact on the streetscape, and its installation is easily reversible. That the awning is installed at the minimum height necessary to accommodate the swing of the storefront door and is of a length, size, and slope that is proportional to the storefront and recalls the placement of awnings historically installed at this storefront. And that the work does not detract from the streetscape of the Greenwich Village Historic District.
Thank you. Excuse me, and Commissioner Master, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, Mark?
Chair
Aye.
Carroll. Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi. Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 8 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
Right, that's approved. Thank you. And we'll move to the next item.
Public hearing item number 3, LPC 25-06372, an application for an amendment. This is in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 673, Lot 1, 261 11th Avenue, aka 261 to 279 11th Avenue, 220 to 238 12th Avenue, 601 to 651 West 27th Street, and 600 to 654 West 28th Street in the West Chelsea Historic District. This is a complex of American round arch style warehouse buildings designed by George B. Mallory and Otto M. Beck and built in 1890 to 91. The application is to amend a building-wide master plan governing the future installation of signage.
Morning, Commissioners. Can you hear my good for audio? Okay. My name is Jonathan Taylor with Higgins, Grace, Barth and Partners, Preservation Consultants. I'm here with Simon Willett from Cook Fox Architects, my colleague Cass Stackelberg, and Vincent Renda of Columbia Property Trust, representing ownership. We're here with an update to one aspect of the current approved renovation at Terminal Warehouse, a full block warehouse building in the West Chelsea Historic District. The update consists of revisions to the building-wide signage master plan that was approved as part project. The overall project, including the master plan, was approved before the pandemic in January 2020. It's finishing up in a very different world, specifically a very different commercial real estate environment. And so there are some consequent changes to the program of the building. For example, a large ground floor food hall once envisioned is no longer part of the plan, and there have been resulting changes in the building entry and circulation locations. Therefore, we have some adjustments to components of the master plan that are intended to provide additional flexibility for potential leasing scenarios that have evolved since 2020. And we're proposing a couple of additional signage options to be available on 12th Avenue to an anchor building tenant, which are designed to be closely in keeping with the history of signage on the building, which is significant. In fact, here on this view of the 11th Avenue facade, we see the building's historic signage over the arch and on the upper facade, which is sort of emblematic of the role of signage in the character of the building and indeed of the district. Just a quick few snapshots of the project in progress. You may recall that it involves an addition on the west end of the building, as well as restoration of the historic windows across most of the building, or all the buildings are being replaced, most of them matching historic configuration. Details, a restoration of shutters on all of the many hundreds of window openings that had lost them, restoration of the masonry facade, of the vast masonry facade, about 3 acres of masonry, as well as the decorative metals, including the existing historic lettering signage. Just a few other images of the project, an interior view of the tunnel, that historic tunnel that allowed New York Central trains to enter the building, unload directly into the building and access the waterfront. Which will continue to be a central historic feature of the building. There's the creation of a courtyard that provides light to the new top-class office space that will continue to showcase the historic structure of the building, including this massive timber framing. And just to reorient ourselves, and some commissioners may not have been here for the for the original project, but the terminal warehouse is located between 11th and 12th Avenues. It's the largest footprint in the historic district. In fact, it's a quarter of the lot space of the district. The longest side is 700 feet long alone. And again, it's about 3 acres of facade. So I'm going to quickly summarize the existing master plan, talk about adjustments to the blade signs and the rules governing the blade signs and marquee signs, talk a little bit about the historic context for signage on the building and the district as it relates to the proposed signage on 12th Avenue. So these are the elevations from the existing master plan. This is 11th Avenue. We're not proposing any changes, but you'll see there's ground floor signage for storefront establishments. That's options of painted, plaque, or mounted letter signs. And there's building signage over and around the tunnel entrance arch. On 27th and 28th Street, there was permitted 2 blade signs originally intended to, at the mid-block, originally intended to relate to the proposed food hall at the time. The green are signs on the new approved canopies of the building. One of those on each side street was proposed to be approved to be internally illuminated. The others are indirectly illuminated. So 27th, 28th, 27th Streets. And then the existing approved 12th Avenue facade, there's one canopy with sign, again, ground floor signage. And there is approved to be new lettering over the arch on this side where it didn't exist before the project. At the time of the project, new building signage lettering, it would say Central Stores. That's what's permitted now at that arch. And this is just the details of the approved marquee signage, just as a reminder of what those are, since we'll be talking about a little bit of change in locations and numbers of those. So first, these are updates on the marquees and blades. The top is the approved and below is the proposed. And the vertical lines, just so you know, the building is historically divided into 26 stores. Those are historic units of the building. And those are demarcated by the dotted lines. So the approval was for the 2 blade signs. The proposed is still to have only 2 blade signs on each side street, just adding 2 new possible locations for them to be located towards a building lobby near 11th Avenue. Again, there could only be a total of 2. It's just new options about to where to put them, and no change to the sides of the signs. For the marquee signs, an increase on this street, this is 28th Street, from 7 to a possible total of 10. This is just to allow greater flexibility in terms of the apportionment with respect to building entrances as they will be now. So the logic is that there could be 1 marquee sign per store, or for some stores are wider and have more than 1 entrance. And so if in the case of those, there could be 2. And then on 27th Street, title, I think here should say 27th Street, but it says 28th again. Again, with the blade signs, just additional options for location, again, to additional other building lobbies, no change in quantity, no change in sign. Possibility of 8 total marquee signs instead of 7. And then the option to take the illuminated marquee sign from the other side and have it also be on this street. So again, there would never be more than 2 internally illuminated signs on the marquee. It's just about whether they could be at the 2 locations here rather than 1 on each street. So again, the details of the marquee signs are totally the same. This would just revise to on the text to the new rules for options. So a few renderings just to show how from the street, how the new blade signs locations would look from the avenues. So we're on 11th Avenue and 28th Street. This is what was previously approved, the 2 blade signs in the middle of the block. This shows if the option was taken to move them, they would be closer here. 11th and 27th, same thing. In this case, they're moved to each end of the block. So this is the view from 12th Avenue, again, showing the approved addition and the existing approval for the arch sign, by the way, Central Stores. And then the proposed the blade sign would be, one of them would be closer to the avenue. And this also shows the other part of our proposal today, which is new zones for new options for anchor tenant signage on 12th Avenue facade. to allow the tenant to use lettering over the arch instead of building signage, where there's already letters proposed, it's just the content of them. And then a zone in the upper part of the 12th Avenue facade where lettering signage could also be introduced or reintroduced because it was a historic location for tenant signage. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of history just to talk about that. This 1895 photo of the building at completion. This is the 11th Avenue facade. You can see over the arch it says Central Stores. That was a reference to this New York Central, which again had access to the tunnel. By 1904, the actual building company operator was Terminal Warehouse. So by 1904, that signage on 11th Avenue had changed from Central Stores to Terminal Stores. So again, we see a little bit of change of the signage according to operators and users associated with the building. By 1912, it's an oblique view, but we can see that the rest of the terminal-free bonded cold storage lettering had been added to the upper part of the 11th Avenue facade. About the same time, there was an idea to expand the 12th Avenue side of the building to enlarge it, raise it up higher. That didn't come to fruition, but we can see how in this rendering of that plan, there was an idea to put the same language across the 12th Avenue facade. And I think this image also speaks to the district buildings and the district's relationship to the waterfront and the waterfront, the river, and the West Street as sort of an audience for signage of this type. And which the working waterfront isn't there anymore, but the West Side Highway and the park, the river still are. And so we think this is still, this is a historic feature of the district that could still be appreciated today. Again, and so some of the evolution of signage on the building. This is a view on the south facade for the tenant sign for the Francis H. Liggett Company, a major grocery tenant for many decades. And you can also sort of see that there's signage over the arch here, which we'll see better. In this photo, Francis H. Liggett had tenant signage over the arch of 12th Avenue for a number of decades. Again, building in context for the river and this large-scale signage on other buildings facing the river, including this Lehigh Valley Pier and the Baltimore Ohio Railroad, which we can also see in these photos of the kinds of large-scale signage that was oriented towards traffic on West Street and the waterfront. By 1940, the 12th Avenue side of Terminal Warehouse also had a large Premier Food Products mounted lettering on 12th Avenue. This was a brand of the Liggett Company. So this close again, the arch signage and the upper facade lettering. Later, the building was painted, but the signage was maintained. Additional painted signage you can see. And here by the 1980s, many generations of painted signage on the building. And so with that in mind, we present the proposed new 12th Avenue zone for lettering signage on 12th Avenue. On the left is, again, the current master plan, and on the right, diagram of what would be permitted under this proposed amendment. And that is at the arch, again, where lettering is already, mounted lettering is already permitted, to allow that to have tenant lettering instead of just saying Central Stores. And then a zone on the upper facade, just where we saw recently the Premier Food signage, a zone for lettering, also for a tenant. And those zones in the rendered view. And the proposal would actually give 3 different options for signage types in these zones. The first one would be metal mounted lettering here that basically emulates the kind of applied pin mounted letters that are used currently for the historic terminal signage elsewhere on the building. Example like that. Some details, 1.5 inch thick letters, pin mounted through mortar joints. All the signage types would be allowed to be indirectly illuminated by a fixture below the text, which have 1 conduit penetration. The second option would be painted signage, and at either location. So again, consistent with the types of signage we've seen on the building and in the district. And the third option would be for mounted rails that would allow for, that would have letters attached to the rails. The rails would be through bolted, but there would be fewer penetrations than a pin-mounted letters, which would have smaller pins per letter, but this would just be on the rails, and then the letters could be swapped out from the rail. And here we just have there's the guidelines that the parameters for all the signage. The letters would be 60 inches tall above and no more than 48 inches tall over the arch. Colors would be grayscale only, except for one other color could be allowed, taking up no more than 15% of the area. So to keep things from being garish or out of character. Logos would be allowed, but no bigger than a letter would be than the size of the letter. And so we think these parameters would be things that would help keep the signage consistent with the character of the historic signage on the building. And I think we're aware that like the historic existence of a variety of signage doesn't mean we're not asking for permission to do absolutely anything you've ever seen on this building, but trying to establish parameters that really zero in on what made the signage characteristic of the building to begin with, and be consistent with that in the building and the district. That's it.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
Any questions, commissioners? And I just had one question. Is the sign over the arch, which will now be tenant signage, intended to go hand in hand with the sign up on the upper portion of the facade? And then, so if they choose one of the three options, would that be applied to both locations?
I think the intent is that it could be applied to both locations by one tenant, or it could conceivably be two different tenants.
And two different types.
Two different
Types.
Yes, I do want to clarify one thing, is that the rail type, sorry, I should have mentioned this, would not apply to the arch. The arch could only have the sort of more, the thinner lettering or the paint. And one other thing I want to mention is that for the painted signage, it's only lettering. It would be only letters, no like backgrounds, fields, borders, just the individual letters.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Is there any historic precedent for the rail signage?
No, I don't believe there is on this building. I think it's a type that we've seen used in other locations. This was actually added to the proposal as we went through the community board process, where they expressed some concern about penetrations, the number of penetrations from mounting letters. And so it's I think a more modern type that's intended to, and we added it as a possibility because it would add flexibility for adding sort of long-term rails with fewer penetrations, where the letters, when swapped, even though they're going to be swapped in with laces or 10 or 15-year terms, so that the letters could be swapped without changing the attachment to the building.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
When I look at page 41, at your diagram, and I see the corner signs, they look really good. And when I look at when they're rendered, they look so odd. They look like almost every building I see in Manhattan. And I'm wondering, do you need the corner sign at all? Or because
Sorry, which
all
sign?
the renderings of them look so, they don't add to the building somehow. They're just there.
Yeah, the ones on the corners
Yeah, the corner signs.
on the first floor.
On the first floor, pedestrian level.
Right. Well, I mean, there actually have been signs of this type on the building since before this project, and they're part of the existing master plan. I mean, I think what's rendered are, hypothetical examples.
You have a black one that just dominates the corner. Any sign that you put there is going to dominate the corner. And
We're talking about
corners
the
are
ground floor
important.
painted signs.
I mean, if you raised it up a
Yeah.
story higher.
Just to clarify about the signs on the corner, those are part of prior approvals. It's not anything that's before you today. Those are either existing conditions or things that are, have been reviewed and approved by the commission in the past.
Right, so they're not part of what we're talking about, what we're bringing today.
Okay, all right.
Public has money.
Members of the public joining us by Zoom, please use the raise hand function. Pamela Wolf, I will be promoting you to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Commissioners. I am Pamela Wolf, President of Save Chelsea. Save Chelsea agrees with Community Board 4's recommendation for non-invasive painted lettering identifying the building rather than a tenant at the 12th Avenue arched opening. The brickwork forming this opening is a bravura set piece that should be kept as intact as possible. We also recommend lettering applied to rails with integrated lighting for tenant identification signage on the upper right of the 12th Avenue facade. We share CB4's concern about destructive penetrations into the building's brickwork and note that this is a particular concern for tenant signage, which may be repeatedly changed. Brick restoration is proceeding apace on the 12th Avenue end of the building. There is some evidence of inadequate care having been taken, perhaps before the current restoration. We ask the Commission to assign staff to observe the ongoing work to ensure appropriate quality and compliance. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have David Holoka. I'll be promoting you to panelist, after which you may unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Commissioners. I am David Holoka, a Community Board 4 member speaking on the board's behalf. CB4 recommends approval of the added potential locations for banner signs on the side streets. The applicant presented CB4 with 3 options for 2 major signage locations on the 12th Avenue facade. These were as presented today, lettering painted onto brickwork, cutout letters pinned to brickwork, and rail-mounted letters. As presented to CB4, there would be no logos. A lighting track would be mounted below the lettering on the upper right facade to illuminate it, regardless of the type of lettering. Our recommendations reflect CB4's overriding interest in minimizing destructive penetrations into the building's brickwork. We recommend approval of amendments to the master plan at these 12th Avenue locations with the condition that painted lettering identifying the building, not a tenant, is used at the ground floor arched opening, and that lettering applied to rails with integrated lighting is used for the proposed tenant identification signage on the upper right part of the 12th Avenue facade. The latter would allow replacement of letters as anchor tenants turn over without adding invasive penetrations into historic brickwork for each letter. Integration of lighting into the rails would allow illumination without separate penetrations into brickwork for a dedicated lighting track. We find the building's arched portal on 12th Avenue such a signature element that it is only appropriate for building identification signage. Reserving it for this would also avoid the need to invasively change signage with each new anchor tenant and make painted lettering the least invasive solution viable. While pinned letters identifying the building are currently approved at this location, CB4's acceptance of the nearby anchor tenant signage is contingent upon substituting painted building identification lettering in a historically appropriate style at the arch. The arch is impressively formed by 15 radiating courses of Rolock brickwork and especially merits protection. Even penetrations for pinned lettering planned to occur only at brick joints would inevitably damage its brickwork. CB4 earlier expressed similar concerns about such damage to brickwork in a signage application for 547 West 26th Street, the Chelsea Factory, also located in the West Chelsea Historic District. The Commission agreed with these concerns and arrived at a painted letter solution with the applicant. We would like to add that much of the terminal warehouse's brickwork, including the 12th Avenue facade, is in alarming condition. It shows signs of damage and improper repointing, including harmful saw cutting of mortar joints. We ask the commission to assign staff to observe ongoing work. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. If any other member of the public would like to offer testimony, please use the raise hand function. All right, John Graham, I will be promoting you to panelist, after which you may unmute yourself and state your name for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. John Graham, if you could unmute yourself.
Sorry, Commissioners. Good morning, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society in New York. Given the history of painted signs on this and other industrial buildings in New York City, the Victorian Society supports a change to the master plan to allow a painted sign at the main monumental arch of the west facade to identify the new first floor tenant. We agree with Community Board 4, however, that the poor condition of the brickwork, including loss of mortar and bad repointing, should be corrected pursuant to an LPC permit before any additional or altered signs are installed. These long brick facades displayed various large signs over the years, and we support new painted signage, including in a location on the upper right west facade. We do not, however, think it's appropriate to light this new sign for a single tenant. There's already too much distraction from this historic facade caused by the highly visible rooftop addition. A master plan for facade lighting would be useful in association with the sign master plan, but we find a separate spotlight on the sign at the upper wall to be inappropriate. The new sign should be painted or track mounted, but should not consist of pin mounted letters, which cause too much damage to the integrity of the brickwork. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you for your testimony. Would any other members of the public joining by Zoom like to offer testimony? All right, seeing none, I will note that we also received written comments from Village Preservation recommending approval while suggesting a penalty system for dissuading unpermitted work that requires subsequent legalization.
Prior
item. All right, would you like to respond to the comments?
Yeah, just want to make a
Hi.
point.
Oh. Oh. Yeah, I've certainly gotten used to doing it at this point.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to a few points. First of all, just to clarify again regarding the arch on 12th Avenue, that the current master plan does allow for the pin mounted lettering that says to say central stores. So that's already approved in terms of the community board's urging that there be only building signage that's only painted. There was mention of logos not being part of what we presented to the community board. That's not something that has changed in our proposal since then. So there might have just been, if there's any misunderstanding. But again, a logo would not be permitted to be any taller than a letter. With regard to the building's masonry, I mean, it is the building does has exhibited many generations of its age and many generations of masonry campaigns over time. I think some of which are still legible, even as we have worked closely with staff on restoration and improving samples and improving the work, and we'll continue to work closely with staff on that and review. Happy to review any issues as we work towards the end of the project. speaking about pin mounted lettering, I think it's something that the pin mounted lettering in masonry joints is something that the commission commonly reviews and approves, both at staff level and at the commission level. It's obviously something that's very historically characteristic at this building as well. And we believe that obviously the building is subject to a regular local law repair, and any turnovers would be accompanied by complete repair. With the building, with the restoration work that we've done, we've identified proper brick match, proper mortar match, and so any turnover, any repairs would be done completely. And I just want to emphasize forthrightly that this 12th Avenue location for tenant signage is emerged as an important consideration in the leasing of the building. We've seen it's a historically important view shed. That's kind of part of the character of the district. In other words, visibility of what this building looks like from the river. That's still something today. And so we think that the signage is sort of physically and conceptually very much in keeping with the character of the building and the district.
Great, thank you very much. Any final questions, commissioners? All right, let's move to our hearing discussion. Commissioner Lutfi, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Master, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have an amendment to a previously approved master plan for signage, which involves allowing additional locations for already approved vertical signage and signs on the marquees, and then these two signage options for 12th Avenue. And Commissioner Goldblum, would you like to start this?
Sure. I think that the application for the work on the two side streets is appropriate. I think that the options for relocating the blade signs, the increase in the number of marquee signs, and the increase in flexibility with the placement of the illuminated marquee signs are all fine. I think that the proposal to change the arch on 12th Avenue to tenant signage is appropriate, but I'm having trouble with the logo aspect of it. I think that the font and nature of the signage is so strongly tied to the identity of the building that seeing Sephora or I don't know, Whole Foods or something as using a logo, I think would be distracting and problematic for me. So I could accept the arch sign in either the pin mounted or painted versions with using the block letter font that is used also on 11th Avenue. I think that the block text image shown here on 12th Avenue could be painted or pin mounted, but not rail mounted. I think the rail mounting is a little too out of sync. I mean, I think in general, to step back, the reason I think it's okay is because the signage is so very much identified with this building and how it's presented itself over the years. So I think that the fonts are more problematic for me. I think the upper location is less problematic in terms of using a logo font than the lower one. But I think if they're going to use a logo font, it should be painted only. It should not be metal. It's a little bit of a, I don't know, odd take, but I think it's trying to create a hierarchy where the arch sign maybe could be permitted a greater degree of permanence and kind of three-dimensionality, as long as it kind of retained its relationship to the building's identity. And the logo could be placed up high, but it would have a more ephemeral quality because it's a painted letter. That's my take. I'm sure others will have different takes, and I'm interested to hear.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg.
So I largely agree with Commissioner Goldblum. Whatever type of signage one puts on this building is going to potentially damage the building if not done right, whether it's pin or rail or painted, particularly if you want to change them. I think the rail is inappropriate. I think the pin and painted are fine. I think the logo could either be pin or painted in the upper part. That's where I don't totally agree with Commissioner Goldblum. And there shouldn't be a logo over the arch.
Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, I think that this is such a huge building and it is, the masonry speaks for itself. And I think that my personal preference will be as much as possible to be the historic painted, minimal damage to the masonry type. I understand the context of the history that you have had multiple iterations of previous thing, but I would advocate that as much as possible that we keep to the original hand painted or the painted.
And do you have a thought on block font versus logo font?
That I would defer to the commissioners. I don't have a specific preference, but yeah.
Commissioner Chapin?
I think that the additional options for the ground floor illuminated marquee signs and the vertical projecting signs are appropriate and won't add additional signage. And that the slight increase in marquees is appropriate also where it was needed. I think that most of the exterior signage I can approve, but I agree with some of the other commissioners on the issue of the rail mounted signs. I think those are not appropriate, and that area where they were proposed, you could use a painted sign or pin mounted sign, but I would not like to see the rail mounted sign.
Okay, and you feel it could be painted or pin mounted in either location? And
I think so, yeah.
And any thought on the font, whether it should be a block font or it could be the tenant's logo font?
I agree that, I mean, personally, I prefer to see it's a consistent approach rather than just whatever it might be, you know.
Okay. Commissioner Lutfi.
I just want to step back for 1 second because this is a great project. And I think the applicant has done a wonderful job, and I really, in looking at it, feel very good about the commission's role in bringing it to this point. I can certainly appreciate, look, this is a very difficult commercial market, and I certainly can appreciate the applicant's needs, and other applicants have approached us, you know, with it, who have large facilities with retail space, especially their need to have flexibility in terms of how they define the size of their spaces, which might mean that they need to be able to increase the number of signs at the street level. And, you know, I can easily go with that. I also believe that pretty much most of this, pretty much everything that has been requested is approvable. The blade signage, well, you know, the work on the side streets, the illumination, the illuminated signage. I happen to agree with my colleagues that, you know, we approved the pin mounted signs, and I can continue to feel that that's acceptable. And I also think the painted signage is a terrific idea. And continues to be, and but that the rail signage, I don't think we need an extra option here. And I'm kind of open about whether or not it's the applicant's logo is allowed or it's block lettering. The block lettering is wonderful. maybe if it's a painted sign, I would feel okay about using the applicant's logo as opposed to something that is somehow applied. And I do not think that an anchor tenant should have its name around the arch.
So if we don't regulate content, we don't regulate content, I think that's
So, but isn't that a request that's
so
being
it's
made?
to do, yeah, but I mean, I was thinking of it more in the context of whether it's an identifiable logo font versus a building block font.
For the arch.
The arch, yeah.
I mean, I was thinking, and I'm open to discuss this a little bit, that that the arch, if there's arch signage, it should somehow relate to what's going on at the ground level, because the applicant really wants to attract people into that level. And as opposed to, if Microsoft wanted to be an office tenant in the building. But maybe I'm looking at it in a crazy way.
I think that the answer would be that it's never required to permanently put building signage. So I think it would either be signage or no signage.
Or if it's going to be Microsoft over the arch, it should look like building signage in terms of its block font. You can regulate the font, but not the content of the sign.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, so with that in mind, I think my preference would be no signage. And number two being if there were, because the commissioners in general feel that there could be, that it be block signage.
Okay. Commissioner Master?
Yeah, first of all, on the ground floor, I think the additional illuminated marquee signs and the vertical signs are fine, given that there's been a change of their commercial leasing plans. I think the building can certainly support that. In terms of the arch signage, I agree with Commissioner Goldblum. I think that the tenant signage there is fine because historically we have had signage there. I think that he made a very good point that it should be block lettering and a logo should probably not be allowed on the arch. In terms of the signage on the wall, on the face of the building, I agree with the other commissioners that we can have pin mounted or painted. And here I think a logo should be allowed.
I don't have too much to add. I think it's all been covered.
Mm-hmm. I'm okay with it. Yeah. So we're gonna go logo up top, block down low, pin mounted or painted in either location.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay, regarding 261 11th Avenue, also known as 261 279 11th Avenue, 220 238 12th Avenue, 601 651 West 27th Street, 600 654 West 28th Street in the West Chelsea Historic District. The application is to amend building-wide master plan governing the future installation of signage. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the West Chelsea Historic District. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the additional options for the location of illuminated marquee signs at the ground floor and vertical projecting signs at the upper floors will allow flexibility for incoming tenants and will not increase the overall amount of signage at the building. The slight increase in the number of marquee signs in both West 27th and West 28th Streets
facades reflects changes in the building's interior layout and entrance locations, will not detract from or to damage any significant features of the building. The change in signage is 12th Street entrance, tunnel arch entrance from the building identification to a tenant identification sign with the new option, painted letters, is consistent with the historic use of this area and is an existing sign type permitted by the previously approved master plan. That the linear light fixtures will be small in scale and finished dark gray to match previously approved fixtures and restored hardware, resulting in a consistent appearance that is compatible with the historic materials and finishes of the building. The large pin-mounted dimensional letter sign or painted individual letter sign on the 12th Avenue facade will be reminiscent of and placed in a similar location to the historic sign that was present on this facade in the 1940s and will recall historic upper floor signage at buildings of a similar age and style within this historic district. However, I recommend that the application for thick dimensional letters on rails be eliminated. And I recommend that the tenant signage at the arch on 12th Avenue be limited to the font of the used on the 11th Avenue arch as well.
Commissioner Ginsburg, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 8 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Oh, great. Thank you. Right, we're going to move to one more item.
Next item is public hearing item number 4. This is LBC 25-04503, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 848, Lot 14, 893 Broadway in the Ladies Mile Historic District. This is a neo-Greek style commercial building built in 1844 and altered in 1873 to 74 by James J.F. Gavignon. The application is to install a flagpole.
Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name is Chad Lundeen. I'm with Safa. We're a home furnishing brand that occupy the 893 Broadway. Do I navigate this?
You just click on it. You should be able to then advance.
Scrolling. Oh, okay, scrolling. Okay, great, thank you. Safa has been around since 2010. We're a home furnishing brand that started in Queens, New York. And we just built our flagship store in this district in February of last year. We're very excited to be in the community. And one of the things that we like about the community is the character of the street between 20th Street and 19th Street on Broadway. There's a lot of great tendencies, a lot of co-tendencies that we like with our brand. And you know, it's a challenging location because the street frontage we have is, you know, relatively small. It's about 26 square feet or linear feet. And so we don't have a large area to represent our brand. And we do have a small signage band in front, but no signage that allows people to see from the street levels walking down Broadway. So we're asking the commission to allow us to put a flag on the building that once was previously there, but we understand wasn't legal, but a pole was attached to the building at one point and removed, but that attachment point is still there today. So just to give some context of the location, you know, this is the street looking towards 19th Street from 20th Street. Equinox has two flag poles on their facade. It's a large facade. We recognize that. And during our discussions with the advisory committee, we downsized our proposal from a like kind size with Equinox to a smaller sign per the recommendations. So you can see they have 2 flag signs representing their brand, 4x8. And then across the street, there's a great restaurant called Mez. You also have a smaller square footage area. They're about 21 linear feet of frontage. And they have a sign that's around 3 feet by 6 feet in the vertical format. And so after talking to the commission, the advisory group, we decided to downsize the flag to match the Mez flag across the street from us to be more in line with the fabric of the street. and our neighbors. Moving down the street, there's also hints of other flagpoles on 892 Broadway. Further down the street, there's ABC Carpets, been around for a long time. They also have a large flagpole and flag situated at a corner from us. And then even further down, brand new Great Barrel, beautiful stores that have been in there. It's amazing. They also have a large flag, 3x6, more or less. We eyeballed it best we could. And then even further down the street, Paragon Sports has an even larger flag. It's 50 square feet. And so this neighborhood has a history of these flags and flagpoles down the corridor, which we believe allows, or that's why we're petitioning for this flag. The flag in the position you're seeing now is where the previous tenant a while ago put a flagpole and the penetrations into the facade, which we're asking for to put in the same spot because we recognize the nature of the building. We don't want to create any more penetrations into the facade, and we just use the same locations. And we would work with the engineering, make sure that it's appropriately mounted, with any galvanic action, make sure you use the right like-kind materials. And so for a long-term permanent flag display, we're in the space for 10 to 15 years. So we have a vested interest in maintaining the building. Our landlord does as well. We are in agreement with the landlord. They allowed us to pursue this avenue. So they are supporting of this flag as well. And this is just a quick detail of the flag that we're asking for 3x6. That's similar to the Mez across the street, though in the horizontal format versus the vertical format. And again, we would use the same holes that are in the building today with the same bracket structure for the flag. That's it. Pretty straightforward. Any questions?
All right. Any questions, commissioners? All right. Not seeing any questions. We'll take public testimony and then we'll come back and they have, yes, Commissioner Chapin.
It's really for the staff. How many of these, or unless the applicant knows, how many of the examples are actually permitted that were presented, or what is the?
To answer your question, it appears that all of the ones that were shown in the presentation existed at the time of designation of the historic district.
I see. So they're kind of grandfathered at this point. Okay, thank you.
And the commission has approved flagpoles in this historic district. I think early on really limited it to the long side streets, because recognizing how these side streets were very long and hard to get visibility from the avenues. But in the last 10 years or more has also approved them on avenues in this historic district. And when we look at flagpoles and banners, we look at the size relative to the building to which it's being attached, and its architectural features, and then the mounting and whether or not the mounting is into his significant historic fabric. And so while we have approved flagpoles here, we'll look at this particular case in terms of its size, scale, and placement and attachment.
Yeah, I was more concerned
Yeah.
about the size and whether, because a couple of them are very large, so I was wondering about the. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we have thought about size more carefully in terms of the building, again, the size of the building itself. All right, I'll note that there's no one in the hearing room to speak on this item, so I will turn it over to Stephen to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you. If any members joining us via Zoom would like to offer testimony, please use the raise hand function. John Graham, I will be promoting you to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society of New York. There are a lot of problems with this proposal. Securing a flagpole to a historic and finely detailed cast iron facade goes against all tenets of historic preservation. Beyond that, this application lacks the basic information required to make an informed decision. And we feel that the Commission's bracket sign rules offers an appropriate solution. The best features of 19th century cast iron are visible at 893 Broadway. The castings are beautifully detailed. They've survived intact for 150 years. Cast iron strength allows for elegant, slender supports. But cast iron also has inherent drawbacks. It's a brittle material, and once there's water infiltration, it can rot from the inside. Flags and flagpoles move slightly every time the wind blows and stress the material. Attaching one to historic cast iron is a recipe for destruction and should always be prohibited. This presentation is inadequate. The applicants haven't provided any real installation details. There are no close-up photos showing the location of the proposed flagpole. They do reference a previous flagpole which received an LPC violation and was removed. The holes for this installation are still visible, though not in the applicant's presentation material. We don't know if the applicant intends to reuse these holes or would drill additional holes. Many flagpoles, including at least half the ones shown in the applicant's photos, have a side brace. The applicant has provided no information on that or where, if a side brace is required, it will be attached. Finally, this is a very tall storefront with modern infill. A bracket sign or a flagpole could be attached to that modern windows or storefront infill rather than the cast iron. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Lucy Levine.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds the proposed flagpole inappropriate for this location because we feel the flag will detract from the tall, elegant, slender facade. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. If any other members of the public joining us via Zoom would like to offer testimony, please use the raise hand function. Right, seeing none, I will note that Manhattan Community Board 5 recommends approval.
Okay. Would you like to respond to the comments we've heard?
No, I appreciate the comments. We do need to do some engineering before we proceed. We understand that. We want to get to this point and see if we have approval to move forward with the flag before we spend engineering costs and with appropriate connections that we will use the existing location holes in that way. They are exposed today. They probably need to be repaired in some way. So adding the flagpole back in and appropriately and designed properly, engineering with our landlord, then we would proceed with that. You know, and if we need a secondary approval for a contingency approval for that, you know, attachment piece, we're happy to come back and do that.
Okay. All right, Commissioners, any final questions? All right, let's move to our discussion. Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the favor? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so this is a building where there was a previously installed flagpole without Landmarks Preservation Commission permits, and this is an application for a new flagpole and banner, which would be inserted or attached at the same point within the cast iron column. And the applicant is proposing an 8-foot pole with a 6-foot long banner hanging from it. Excuse me. So Commissioner Jefferson, would you start this one?
Yeah, when I started reading this one, I thought it was an easy one. And then I got more details. I think the flag is too big. I think it should be smaller. I think the pole should be smaller. 8 feet is quite a large pole. And then the attachment to the building and reading the community boards, they said it was fine to attach it to the buildings. And I read somewhere else that there was a problem. So I went back and looked at details and I couldn't find any. So that's something that should be resolved with staff.
Generally, staff.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said, which is that it shouldn't be in the cast iron. And I also think that the horizontal orientation is not typical. I think that the vertical or square orientation is much more typical of the district, and this kind of looks weird.
In general, I agree with my colleagues. If they could show that they were putting it into existing holes and there would be no structural stress on the cast iron, I might be able to accept that, but I'm not sure. They'd need a lot more documentation, and our structural engineer would then have to review the calculations. The simple answer is to put it in the storefront.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with most of the comments, and I think that, the banner may be too large in this instance. And then, however way we choose to mount it, or the location, I defer to the commissioners.
First, it's installed in the wrong place, and it's, injured the historic fabric, which is not, the applicant's fault, as far as I know, anyway. So they should not install it there, and the cast iron should be repaired. The total dimension of the flag, I don't have that much problem with, given its location in this area where there's a ton of other flags that were, there originally when the district was designated. So it's sort of competing with a lot of other flags. So, but one thing they could do to kind of reduce the thing is maybe reorient the flag so it's vertical, in which case they could have a flagpole that's much smaller, like 3 feet flagpole or something, and still have a 5 or 6 foot flag that would be, so that's what I would recommend for this particular situation.
All right, thank you, Commissioner.
And install it in the sill or window, or, in the storefront infill instead of in the cast iron.
Thank you, Commissioner Lutfi.
My fellow commissioners, and just want to emphasize, given as the occupant, not the applicant, the applicant said, the details are not really worked out that well, that it's imperative to work very closely with staff on this moving forward. And I also agree with the statement that it should not be in the cast iron. Cast iron, somebody, whether it's the applicant or the building owner, should repair that. And the proportions and the orientation of the flagpole need to change, and the banner itself, and the location. So more central to the building. This isn't, as the applicant said, many of the commercial users that they referenced are, have huge storefronts. So I think, this is a smaller one. That's why the location might not be quite right, and the proportions might not be quite right, given the size of this very lovely building. So.
Okay, Commissioner Master.
Yeah, I agree that the location should be changed to the modern storefront infill. And I agree in general with all of Commissioner Jefferson's comments.
Okay. All right, so I think we can make a motion to approve it with the modifications that it not be installed in the cast iron, and that the cast iron be repaired as they work with the staff on the location, and that the proportions and orientation of the banner be restudied with the staff. You can.
That the use that the use of flagpoles and banners for commercial advertising purposes is consistent with the commercial character of this section of Broadway, and that the cumulative amount of signage in conjunction with the existing signage at the first floor storefront will not detract from the building or streetcase. However, I find the mounting of the flagpole at the decorative cast iron piers, which was previously damaged by a similar installation done without Landmarks Preservation Commission permit, will detract from this significant architectural feature, and that the length of the flagpole and banner as proposed will be excessively long and overwhelm the facade of this small commercial building. Should I continue with this?
Yeah.
Yeah. That the flagpole be installed at the storefront infill at the sill of one of the windows at the second floor, and that the cast iron piers be properly repaired, and that the flagpole and banners be reduced in length, and the cast iron flagpole be reviewed.
Yeah.
And the location and placement of the flagpole be reviewed with staff.
Right. So you, just to be clear, you're going to work with the staff on the location and the repair of the cast iron and this size and orientation of the banner and the flagpole. All right, Commissioner Master, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, Mark, will you?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 8 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, so that's approved with those modifications. Thank you. All right, we're going to break for lunch and we will come back at 10 after 1, and we will ask all members of the public who are in the Zoom to exit voluntarily at this time, so that should you wish to return, you don't experience technical difficulties that may result if we have to remove you. And we'll see everybody at 1:10.